Yeah. So today we are going to, yesterday I'm sure if all of you had joined us on Facebook, we had a session on women in translation, and we had translated a book from Assamese to English by Arupa Patange Kalita, and so we talked about it. Today we are going to talk about Odissi, and yeah, it's good to hear Nikita is saying she's just started learning Odissi. So very excited about the talk. And she's been thinking about the buying the book. Yes, absolutely, because it's not just the history of Odissi, but it's actually understanding the entire semantics of the language, of the dance language. So it is very interesting to see how the author Rekha Tandon, I'll show the book to you, how after learning Odissi in India from 1978 to 1994, she went for her Ph.D. in dance at the Laban Institute from Laban, and how the different things come together. It's quite interesting to know that. And so I'm not going to speak much, but I'm going to wait for the author and talk about it much more in detail. Hi Bhupinder. Hi Laiba. I don't even know the name now. Khandani Gehni, so I don't know really. But yes, so that is the beginning of it. But as a dancer myself, as a person who's learned dance for a really long time, even though we are going to explain why is it titled as this, yoga forms a very integral part of our dance, of any classical dance. And before we started our classes, we always have 30 minutes of yoga session before before our dance classes. So yeah, it's for everybody who is interested and who is a practicing dancer, will find this book quite useful, and I'm sure you'll be intrigued by whatever she has to say. But let me assure you, this is just going to be a sneak peek, as if I go into a detailed discussion on this book, we'll not be able to finish it within 30 minutes. However, having said that, in the month of September or October, we'll organize a proper closed session on this aspect. And yeah, so then we can dive deeper into the concept and perhaps even understand the how she sees dance, and perhaps we can learn and perhaps come together and create something new. That's what she's been doing with her dance company. And I can see that Shardi, if I got the name right, she learned from Rekha, and oh, she's from Brazil. So yeah, you can see how far, how much she's doing to take dance onto a global level. Yes, finally.
Okay, finally, yes.
Yes. No, I was just introducing to our readers about the book, about you, and the kind of work that you are doing, and how interesting this book is. So, when I picked up this book to read it all over again, I remember reading it before it as a manuscript, but when I picked it all over again, day before yesterday, I was reading it and I earmarked like two articles from research articles and everything like that. I could finish only two, but I've earmarked 50 of them so that next time I will have a more detailed conversation. I'm going to read up on all of that and have great questions. But just today, because this is an sneak peek into the book, and I want people to read the book before we actually talk about it and discuss in much depth in the month of September or October. So I just wanted to give everybody a sneak peek into the book right now. So I'm not going to be they're not going to be very technical questions, but some technical, but mostly a little generic format so that people can understand the kind of work you are doing and the amazing work that you are doing. I'm
Okay.
already getting a lot of comments and everything. So yeah, I'm going to come back to them from time to time. So my first question. So I'm going to start. They,
Yes, please.
uh, so the first question is, so I introduced everybody the title, which is Dance is Yoga. But what do you mean by dance as yoga, like this term? And what is the connection between Odissi and yoga?
Yeah, what I mean by the title Dances Yoga is a practice of yoga that is directed at the same objectives or the same end point. A practice of dance that is directed to the same end point of yoga, which is
Okay.
really, I mean, the end point of yoga will launch us off in another long discussion, but essentially that's what I mean by yoga. So
Okay.
the practice, it doesn't preclude the fact that dance is a performing art and it's meant for the stage and it's going to reach the audience. It's
Hmm.
really the internal drive or intention, or it's like stirring a course towards a point. So that
Hmm.
the journey of that whole endeavor of, being a dancer and living with your art and where you're progressing with it, or the end point is the same end point
Hmm.
as yoga. That's what I mean by the title of the book.
Okay. But tell me something. You are also a trained architect. And how does your training in architecture actually help in your study? And could you tell us a little bit more about how you understand the weight, space, time, flow in the dance through the technical training?
I have to confess, I'm a qualified architect, but I'm a defunct architect. I, apart from doing a few projects for friends and family in our own place in Skandavan, I've never really practiced architecture. But
Hmm.
I did my full degree. For 5 years, I was immersed in it. And the architectural course is actually a terrific course, because
Hmm.
apart from learning about design and
Hmm.
everything else that goes with architecture, it
Hmm.
really trains you to appreciate, in the context of dance, space and its context and its finer qualities. And
Hmm.
one of the elective, subjects that we do is temple architecture, history of
Yeah.
temple architecture. And that was a real eye opener for me, because even though I knew that, this tradition had come and had been performed in a temple environment for a very long time, just studying temple architecture and getting involved with the progression in shape and size and
Hmm.
ornamentation of temple walls
Hmm.
got me very curious about studying history of art.
Hmm.
And after I did my
Yeah.
bachelor's degree in architecture, I the next thing I did was an MA degree in history of art.
Yeah.
And there I really focused on Orison temple architecture and sculpture. And that journey went on to, looking at the cultural environment and the thought environment,
Hmm.
um, because of the when you start
Hmm.
looking at the sculpture and the
Hmm.
architecture, you see that the dancing actually happened first outside the temple and around the temple
Yes. Hmm.
by male worshippers. and then slowly it entered inside the temple. And then once it entered inside the temple started expanding, and two more mandaps got attached to the main shrine, and one of them, the Natya mandap, was exclusively for dance. And
Okay.
and on the walls of these temples, with time, um, the whole evolution of the use of the body and the use of the tribhang and all the various ways in which the extremities of the body, particularly the feet, and also the various ways in which the tribhang and the
Yeah.
turns are
Yeah.
depicted in on sculpture. You saw that progression through the centuries,
Yeah.
by going from one building to another to another.
Oh.
and and the sculptural motifs also, from being insignificant little auspicious motifs, the dancers started dominating the temple facades, and they were the same shape and size virtually as cult iconography. So one began to see, in by just looking at the temple architecture and the temple sculpture, the huge place the dance ritual had in society at that time.
Yes.
So I think that's the direction the architectural art historical studies took me. And then also in terms of just space, when you start doing choreography, we're quite frontal in the way we work as dancers. But I think it did make me very aware of directions and juxtapositions and levels and
Yeah.
things like that. I think you just spatially become um, more awake
Yeah.
by studying architecture.
Yes. No, I understand. My guru also kept told us about the evolution of Bharatnatyam also, as well as Odissi. It started off as a temple dance, and she tells us that her guru, she was a Devdasi, and they used to have a circle around them, and you have to dance in that space. But as dance moved to space, you have to become more aware of the space, right? So that gets me to my next question, which is about your with um experience with the yantra that is one of your I think experiments. Could you tell us a little bit about the kind of experiment that you did?
Okay,
Okay, I can't hear
yantra
you
is
now.
what
I can't hear
yantra.
you at all. Shucks. Uh,
I can hear you clearly.
yes, but your voice has gone down for me suddenly.
Okay.
So, what do I do? Okay, anyway, continue. I'll try and I'll have to come closer perhaps. Yeah.
Okay. Yantra was an interesting work because it really started with this one of the things in the book that I talk about is choreological studies. And one of the concepts in choreological studies is that when you're sitting in a posture, then if you take 2 points in the body, like for example, we have the choke, where your hands are like that, or if you take, for example, the tips of these two fingers and you look at that invisible line between the two hands, it's like a virtual line, in space, and different parts of the body relate to each other with these virtual lines. And these
Yeah.
virtual lines, depending on your muscle tension and the precision of your placements in our techniques, it's got different qualities,
Yeah.
but they are like lines of energy which make your dancing very clear, very precise, very strong, or very diffused, very
Yeah.
it's the way you inhabit these virtual lines. and also in terms of the spatial movement you make. If you're working on very clean grid lines, it's like you're making a virtual geometry come alive. And we have in the tantric tradition, when you look at a temple plan, you see these lines. And when you look at the yantras or the sacred diagrams that were meant to activate the temple plan, or they were
Okay.
also placed underneath sculptures to activate this, to give energy to the sculptures. These yantras can actually be. I was very taken up by the idea that the virtual lines that you draw in space through your movements, I mean, our nritta sections are very symmetrical, can be compared to virtual yantras that you can very consciously embody. So your central axis is very important because
Yes.
that's from where all the measurements take place.
Yeah.
And the center of gravity of your body, you know, 4 fingers below your navel on the central meridian, or the the center in the torso from which you project your arm movements or whatever, or the center above your head. I think of these as three bindus on your
Yeah.
axis. If you can tune in to your three bindus on your central axis, and then all your movements become linear projections from that central axis. And then we open our knees and lower ourselves towards the ground. So you kind of drop anchor deep into the earth, and you open your hips and energize. You're in an energized state for movement. And
Yeah.
then whatever movements you do with your mudras, or you do with your torso, or you do with your eyes, or you do with your feet, or you do with anything basically, they become measurable from your central axis. So if you're doing things consciously, if you're doing a movement to the left and you do the same amount to the right consciously with your projection of your eyes or with whatever, you start externalizing this internal geometry. And it also makes, if you've got tightness on one side or you've got a cramp somewhere else, you can immediately see the discrepancies in the way the left and right side of your body is moving. So it becomes a very useful way of self-correcting, and also of, becoming more aware of your own technique as you start taking the technique in.
Okay.
So yantra started with this project of drawing virtual lines in space with different parts of the bodies.
Okay.
So and having these bindus from which different body parts were projected. And as it developed, it kind of became an open work, which is a very new concept for classical Indian dance choreography, because we're very precise with our sets. But I wasn't using bowls for the rhythm. So you weren't being, your phrases were not like when you do thari kita di dhalanga tatta. There's weight in every word. So
Yes.
you hit your feet in accordance with that weight. But if you're just using I'm him clean, I'm him clean, it just becomes like a chant or a meter.
Yeah.
And then you have an intention of moving your body from left to right with a measured movement. Or you have a different kind of acoustic space, and it's very open. So you can approach the phrases with targets of what you want to draw in space.
Okay.
But yes, of course, when you start performing it, the choreography, and especially if you're doing it with other dancers, we've staged it with, different numbers of people,
Okay.
gotipuas and, others. So then, of course, it's taken many different shapes and forms. And that's very exciting for me to see how different bodies wear it.
We would also like to see it. Hopefully, the next session that we have on this book. Now, so this is about the physical body that we are talking about. What about Abhinaya? And how do we understand that through the choreographical modeling and the theoretical models that we have? How do we deal with that?
Well, I mean, I don't think choreological studies adds to our rasa theory at all.
Hmm.
I think our rasa theory and how to evoke a bhav is so sophisticated and so finely tuned, it doesn't contribute to that at all. But what
Yeah.
it does contribute to is an understanding of, very fine movement, literally micro movements. It gives you
Hmm.
a vocabulary with which to talk about micro movements. And it also gives you a perception. When you see somebody totally in their movements, the
Hmm.
the the quality of the face or the
Hmm.
quality of the body, it has got certain, it's got there are words to describe it, as
Hmm.
opposed to if somebody is doing the same movements without the same glow
Yeah.
or inner feeling. And it all boils down to micro movements of the body. So, choreological studies gives you a vocabulary with which to to talk about these micro movements,
Hmm.
and also to become more aware of them. You know, you kind of become aware if you've got certain habitual patterns in the way you
Hmm.
hold your muscles or whatever. So that's where it was very useful.
Okay. Um. So after that, there is an interview I read that you'd given to INS, which mentioned, I've been blessed with opportunities to explore Odissi from many different perspectives. You've already told us about the temple architecture. That is perhaps one perspective. Could you tell us about the other perspectives as well? Of course,
Actually,
dance as
the
dancer.
main exploration has been from the perspective of yoga and tantra, um, and to be more specific, the more meditative or mental practices in that are used in the yogic tradition. I mean, for example, I mean that has, apart from looking at it in terms of
Hmm.
the 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 um, the changes in its history and its sociology, and the
Hmm.
changes in its body through sculpture and architecture. Um,
Hmm.
you look at it. I've looked at it a lot from the perspective of how the technique actually works, not just on the physical body but on the mind. And
Yeah.
simple practices in dharana, for example, where you where you focus on one point and let life, go past you.
Yeah.
it it's the same thing when you're dancing. If you are focused on one point, or the if you're focused on the center of gravity of the body in the abdomen, and you let all movements go past it, you get
Yeah.
very finely tuned. You
Is there a break in connection? Yeah, it's back.
keep coming back to that still center.
Hmm.
So I think the main work has been through yoga and through the tantric tradition. And when I
Hmm.
made that comment, I've worked a lot with dancers from different disciplines, and when you look at your own tradition from different eyes, you kind of
Hmm.
see a sort of you kind of and you make the journey of somebody from a different tradition, contemporary dance or whatever it is, coming and getting something from the classical tradition. You kind of keep switching your perspectives.
Hmm. Yeah. So I'll come to that, the last part again, but you talked about the mental state. And so in the book, I read Carl Jung, that part, and I can't find that part to question you on that. But what was that about? That was quite intriguing. How is Carl Jung, his theories related to dance? How can that be?
He talks, what I talk about in the book is this, we come with, we're born with a potential to realize our full, he calls it individuation. You know, you
Hmm.
become the full individual that you are capable of being. And you come with a certain program, so you cannot be like anybody else. You
Hmm.
can only fully be I mean, I think it's Joseph Campbell who says the privilege of a lifetime is to be who you are. It's the same concept that you have to fully express yourself and fully be yourself. Now,
Hmm.
in the classical traditions, because we go through such rigorous training, you know, where you put that part of you in a sense aside, it is the surrender of the ego or the whatever, and it's only when you make that space that you receive the grace of the tradition
Hmm.
and an understanding of the tradition. Um, in that process, what also sometimes happens, which happened with me, I lost touch with my, you know, my individual program in the process of acquiring the, you know, 17 years of doing a tradition in a rigorously, you know, classical way is a long time, where you kind of, I felt I was losing touch with what I wanted to really say or what I wanted to really do with my
Hmm.
dancing. That process of individuation gets interrupted. It
Hmm.
need not, but it did. So
Yeah.
that's what I meant by
It evolution of a dancer. Perhaps you have those things.
evolution of a dancer, evolution of the full personality through the
Hmm.
technique. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm 57 now. I was telling my 20-year-old students yesterday, I
Oops.
wouldn't be dancing Odissi if it still wasn't feeding me.
Hmm.
And you know, doing steps with them, for example, it feeds you because when you have a sense of you have a sense of using it for dharan, and you're
Hmm.
using it for dharan is concentration, collection.
Okay.
It empowers you.
Hmm.
You know, it helps you become more what you are.
Yeah.
It and it gives you the momentum because you're
Hmm.
focusing the mind through the process of training. It gives you the momentum to be who you are and to be who you are fully, unashamedly, and firmly.
Yeah. Very, very, very well put. That is something that now I'm going to ponder to about throughout the night. But when we're talking about different forms of dance, now I want to take a look, small snippet into the different forms of dance and how they can be related. In the book, you've mentioned that Chow might be complementary to Odissi. Can you please explain how? Because visually they seem very different. I've had a very brief training in Chow and Kalaripayattu, so I understand that. And then Odissi is always very graceful. Of course, there's a lot of grace in Chow as well, but Odissi is extremely graceful to me. I think it's one of the most strong dance form. You have to be very strong to even be that graceful. So I asked this question especially also because you've done some experiments where you have included movements from Chow. So I wanted to understand
I,
how are they
I,
complementary?
I haven't included movements from Chow. I've never trained in Chow.
Okay,
But
no, no,
there are others in the Odissi tradition who have. Eliana Sitaristi is, you know, she has trained in both traditions. I'm
yeah,
again losing the bottom of your face.
Sorry?
um, I said I'm again losing the bottom of your face. The comment that
Okay.
I make, yeah, no, now it's fine. The comment I make is that because of Chow's jumps and, the movements of the legs, um, what, for example, Bijoyni is doing right now in Nrityagram. I find these extensions, they are very beautifully married with the vocabulary of Odissi. So that's what I meant, that these jumps and these leg
Yeah.
extensions, they lend themselves to the lines of Odissi very
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
But personally, I haven't trained in Chow. My mixing of vocabularies has really been yogic asanas. The transition from Chauk and Tribhang into actual yogic asanas, and a lot of the choreographic work with the Gotikwas was into acrobatic movements.
Hmm. Apologies for that. I'm really trying hard to hear you. Something happened when the voice went down, so I can't hear it. I'm sure it's absolutely fine there. So I'm literally trying hard to listen to every word. I might miss a few right now, but I'll come to the last question for the evening. And tell us a little bit about the use of technology to understand dance movement. How much has it penetrated Indian classical dance?
I think nowadays the fact that you can, video classes, video Zoom sessions, and sit with them and, actually, study them as a witness and watch yourself. I think that's a huge help. It just allows you to, your recall of everything that you've learned. It's all so easily available to us. And I think all of us are, watching each other so much, learning from each other so much on the internet. One never had that as an option earlier.
Yeah.
So I think I have great hope that the next generations will,
Hmm.
be absolutely fabulous.
I'm sure this generation will also have something. Maybe but this is perhaps one of the benefits of the lockdown that we've become more tech savvy.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm sure this generation will also see a huge change. That's it for tonight. And I'm again saying it that we need a longer session. This a small session will not do justice because I need to read 50 more papers to actually ask more relevant and more uh, stronger questions
We
in the
have
sense
to
that
see, we have to,
they do justice to the entire book. But as I said, this is just a sneak peek into Rekha ji's work and the book that she has written. I hope all of you will get the copy of the book, read it, and so that next time when we have a closed session, you can actually ask your questions and actually make this a worthwhile thing for yourself as well. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much for your time and the love and so much that we've learned today. I'm sure we're going to learn much more after this session when we actually go back and think about it.
thank you for the invitation to talk. I noticed that there were some questions here which I could not read because I was talking at the same time. If you want to
We will,
contact me, you're most welcome. I'll try and answer at length later.
yeah, we'll do that a little later. We'll put these questions up and answers videos perhaps. But at this point of time, even I can't see all of them. But yes, there are a few which I might have to scroll up quite a bit to get them. Yeah, so we'll
Okay.
do that a little later and we'll definitely answer all the questions. Thank you
Okay.
and
Bye.
we'll see you soon.
Bye. Bye.